What is going on, everybody? It's the Reformation Keegan, and I'm here today with another video. So, I am recording this probably a day before it actually comes out. So, it'll probably be published the next day. But I wanted to discuss Lex Luthor. And specifically, I want to discuss Michael Rosenbaum's portrayal of Lex Luthor in Smallville. Because I am just about done the series. I have one episode left, or if you want to count it two, it's a two-parter, the finale. And this show has a lot of intricacies that I think can be explored even further. And I think Lex is a big one. So Lex is really written off in season 7, and then we get a couple appearances of him in season 8 where he is subsequently killed by Oliver Queen, also known as the Green Arrow. But we also know in a way that he returns. And he returns in more ways than one. I'm not just talking about physically, but I'm talking about in terms of a recurring theme in the narrative where you have copies or clones of Lex, and this can be very revealing going forward. But I want to essentially discuss why I believe that Lex Luthor is a product of trauma and tragedy. And disclaimer, this is not condoning his actions in the story. So before I have a whole bunch of comments online saying, "Oh, you're advocating for the heinous acts that Lex Luthor did in this show," that is not true. I'm just giving the story of why this happened, and I'm giving my analysis on why Lex becomes the proverbial monster that everybody claims him to be in the narrative. So I wanted to put that out there first. This is just looking back. It's almost like detective work in a way where you're looking back to find clues to figure out why Lex becomes the way he does. And I'm gonna say that this is tentatively a part 1 episode, if you want to call it that, or video, because I'm gonna dig a bit deeper into Lex's arc, theme by theme. And the one theme that I want to discuss today is Lex's childhood. And this might even be a 2-part episode depending on how long I go, because as always I have my notes, but I also have other indications of Lex's childhood that have been proven to be detrimental to him, and that might have to be in a subsequent video. So there might be 3 parts to this whole video, just in different videos going forward. So I just wanted to say that because today I want to look at the theme of Lex's childhood and how his childhood has impacted his future. And I'm not going to get into every aspect of Lex's adulthood, because I really want to focus on his childhood in this episode, and then tell you how that contributes to his acts going forward in Smallville, where he has a horrible relationship with Lionel, where he can't trust Clark, where he can't withhold a relationship or marriage, and how he has this dueling battle within himself, as seen in seasons 5 and 6, where there's essentially a good Lex and then there's a bad Lex. So I'm going to dig into that deeper, but these indications that I'm giving you from his childhood are going to prove why Lex becomes the way he does. So yeah, I'm going to start with his childhood, and there's about 3 different instances that I wanted to discuss. So the first one is Lex's mother, Lillian Luthor, and she has postpartum depression. And her actions are most prominent, in my opinion, in the episode Memoria, which is season 3. And she essentially suffocates Lex's brother Julian with a pillow, and Lex sees this. He sees it all happen, and this, as a child, is a very heinous thing to see. And you're seeing your little brother, who's defenseless and an infant, getting suffocated, and you're young yourself. Lex wasn't an infant at this point. He was still a bit formative, but he wasn't in a position to physically really defend anything or anybody. So he sees it happen, and then we see Lillian almost weeping and almost aghast at what she did, even though she was in full control of what she was doing. And Lex has to live with seeing his own brother Julian killed. And Julian does return in future episodes, but not in the way that you'd expect. And I don't necessarily want to spoil that right now because it might be in a future video. But Julian is actually dead, for anybody knowing. And Lex takes the blame for Lillian. And Lex is not the one that killed his brother. And I remember thinking initially that this is something Lex would do, that Lex would kill somebody and have somebody else take the blame, but the roles are reversed here as he's younger and he takes the blame. And this can be a counterproductive method going forward where Lex does something and then somebody else takes the blame for him. That's why, in essence, when he's richer per se, because Lionel's rich, but Lex becomes rich himself, he pays people off to do things, or he pays lawyers or pays anybody off to do his bidding. So that's almost like a reactionary response to tragedy. And as far as we know, Lillian is a victim of domestic violence. We see Lionel yell at her, we see Lionel berate her, we even see Lionel hit her, backhand her. And this is also an indication too how she's a victim of postpartum. And depression in this instance, from a postpartum perspective, is also influenced by Lionel's treatment of Lex, and also to Julian. And this becomes a theme of fear, postpartum and fear for Lillian, because Lillian kills Julian due to the fact that she is afraid that Julian is going to have to undergo the same abuse that Lex has endured and also that she's endured. So she thinks that Mercy killing her own son is a way to alleviate the pain going forward, which is a very unhealthy mechanism. However, it is one that is very debatable because you're taking a life and ridding them of that pain, yet we don't really know what happens on the outside world after death. Is there more pain or is there nothing? We don't know. So Lillian in this instance is relying on speculation, but also she's relying on her own agony to get her forward, and that's what happens when she kills Julian. She almost does it as a deliberate panic, if that makes sense. So you do something out of deliberation but also panic at the same time, and this is where simultaneity comes in with the whole show. The whole show exudes a lot of simultaneity, a lot of duality, a lot of ambiguity. Lillian thinks that Lionel would place Lex and Julian against each other by trial. So, and I'm not talking about like knightly trials like you would see in courtly love in medieval literature, but that could also physically happen, but more like he was going to pit them against each other to compete against one another from a business point of view, and also from a perspective of love, and make them duel it out, which is very unhealthy. It's a very unhealthy characteristic to put siblings on, and Lillian thinks that she's alleviating both of them of that by Lex not having a sibling, and also of her not having to witness the abuse and not have to mother another abused child. So Lillian is an interesting case, and I wish even more would have been expanded upon her in the story, because I think there's so many different ways that you could have went with Lillian as a character, even though she was only in flashbacks. But I would say that that's one of the first instances of Lex being a product of trauma and tragedy that influences his later acts. But number two is Lionel's pressuring of Lex to be perfect. This is another big thing that we see throughout. Lionel wants Lex to be a spitting image of him, but also not supersede him, because Lionel is also what we would call a megalomaniac. He teaches Lex to be emotionless on the exterior, yet Lionel's own physical and emotional abuse causes Lex to be skeptical in all other relationships. So if we see in his relationship with Helen, even though Helen was at fault for the atrocity that happened there, Lex still doesn't trust her and let her fully into his life. And the same thing with Clark, even though Clark is at fault too for, lying and even manipulation and keeping secrets. Lex's own obsessions to have a proper relationship, albeit romantic or just from a perspective of friendship, takes a huge toll due to Lionel's pressures. Lionel lives in constant turmoil himself, and this gives also a sense of irony, because he tells Lex that Luthors don't live in fear, yet Lionel, in a way, lives in fear over Lex superseding him, and also of him getting caught for all the horrible acts that he has gone through, as seen when he is placed in jail or in prison for all of the other heinous acts that he has committed. So Lionel, in a sense of irony, lives in fear, but he teaches Lex to not live in fear, saying that we don't live in fear. Well, Lionel, you live in fear, and now that's taught Lex to live in fear. And Lex in a way is independent, but he also craves human relationships. And he fears, I think Lex in a way fears being alone, as we can see through his infatuation and attachment to Lana in seasons 5 and 6. Lex can't handle a relationship because he wants his own independence, yet he wants a human companion to help fill that proverbial void that he had in his childhood. This is where duality and simultaneity also come back into play. But Lionel also instills physical fear into Lex. So, like, he strikes Lex when he doesn't admit that Lillian opened his briefcase, as seen in a flashback. And he also lies to Lex that their nanny left following his mother's unfortunate passing. When basically in reality, Lionel gets rid of her because he doesn't want her and to become an impressionable figure upon Lex. And he doesn't want Lex to become a product of female influence to affect Lex's sentimental state, which means that Lex really, in a way, is a victim of this phrase called toxic masculinity. This toxic masculinity thing can be debated, but Lionel does not want Lex to have any female influence because, in his mind, it would give Lex a more sentimental and compassionate nature, which is why Lex is way more attached to his mother Lillian than he is to Lionel. Even though Lillian does kill Julian, he has way more of a closer relationship with her than he does with Lionel himself. So this female comfort, for lack of a better term, is something that Lionel wants Lex to abstain from, to live in a business-oriented world where there's a lot of cold and calculating risks that need to be taken and cold and calculating actions that do not take anybody's emotional state into consideration. And number 3 is that Lex is additionally bullied at the Excelsior Academy. And he becomes responsible for Duncan being ran over by a car. And Lex has a lot of guilt over this, but also he does things out of anger, and it's anger from his home life, and that doesn't excuse this proverbial act. It's just stating what has happened prior. And Lionel makes him suppress his actual emotions, which manifests in Lex becoming the second coming of Lionel in later seasons, even though Lex in seasons even 5 and 6 wants to see Lionel taken down and even kills Lionel. So spoilers, by the way. But I'm assuming if you watch this video, you've already watched all of Smallville, or at least up to when Lex is written off. But Lex's spiral starts with his unstable childhood, ultimately. And he's still a kid deep down that is misguided. And you can see that from seasons 8 to 10 when there are clones of Lex. And Tess Mercer tries to make Lex in a better, more positive image without Lionel's influence. Basically, finances do not equate to emotional or mental prosperity. And this doesn't excuse any of Lex's subsequent actions, but Lex was definitely a victim of bullying, obviously, a victim of familial abuse, and a victim of trauma, because we can even see in these flashbacks Lex's inability to change anything as a kid. And even too, we're forgetting the meteor shower as well, and Lex, not having his hair anymore and going bald, and that's obviously a target when you're a kid to be bald. Not saying Lex was Caillou or anything, but Lex was bald, and that is something very uncommon for a young child. And Lex in this series is still in his early to mid 20s, so he's still really a kid deep down trying to handle all of this trauma. And yes, you can say there is that factor of human genetics too, but a lot of Lex's tragedy and trauma was very circumstantial. So let's say hypothetically, Lex does not have Lionel. Yes, he would go through the bereavement of not having a father, but if Lex does not go through any of this turmoil or any of this excessive abuse, does Lex become a better figure in human society, or would genetics still play a role? That's to be determined, and that can be debated until the end of time. But one thing is for sure, and it's that Lex would have much more of a compassionate nature. And he does at the beginning with Clark until Lex feels like somebody's lying to him. which is ironic because most of Lex's life is a lie, and all of Lionel's life is a lie, at least until Jor-El comes into play and makes him a vessel. But you can never trust Lionel, and also with Lex, due to the fact that Lionel influences him so much, even though Lex doesn't want to admit it, you can't trust Lex either. So Lex is one of those very complicated villains where you sympathize with their backstory, but you can't condone what's going to happen going forward with them. And I only listed these events from his childhood to maybe give some light to why Lex acts the way he does, why he might have trust issues, why trauma in a lot of ways can disguise how you're truly feeling, or make you act in a way that comes across as villainous. Sorry, because when somebody goes through trauma, they're trying to suppress everything, and their exterior physical actions will compensate for what they're feeling inside mentally. So Lex, obviously, he has all the money in the world. He can have anything he wants materialistically, yet he still envies something. And I think he envies a compassionate relationship, and he doesn't even know it. Lex's external consciousness cannot come to terms with the fact that he needs love, he needs compassion, and he needs care. But when you overcompensate that with finances, or you overcompensate that with a life of societal prosperity, a lot of little intricacies like that can go under the radar. So let me know what you guys think. This was just a little bit of an inspection of Lex's childhood, but I would like to do more of these kind of videos, and maybe do a few different parts of how these even act later on in later seasons, and why Lex becomes the way he does even farther. Let me know what you think. Don't forget, most of all, to like, share, comment, and subscribe. I am on the road to 500 subscribers, and I'm trying to hit 3,000 watch hours so I can become a YouTube partner and make better videos for you going forward. So please hit that subscribe button, leave a comment, give a like, share this video, and I will be back with more. It's a lot of talking. This is almost an 18-minute video, so I'm a little bit prone to be tongue-tied, even though I do study words for a living. So I'll be back soon, and most of all, I'm going to say it again. This is a little bit of redundancy, but hit that subscribe button. See you soon.